Hey there, what's up guys? My name's Raj. I'm the owner and doctor of physical therapy at 3CB Performance. So today's topic, as you can read right here, is regarding Markelle Fultz's jumper and what the heck exactly is going on with it. So we recently had video released, I believe it was on Twitter first, and now it's kind of all the media stuff, media outlets of Markelle Fultz's jump shot, as the main things being that his release is much lower, and you can see that his fluidity as he comes out of it is significantly decreased compared to his old jumper as well. A lot of people are kind of freaking out what's going on, especially Sixer fans. So I'm here to tell you, I'm not that surprised about it, and nor in the short term, it's not that alarming either. And the reason I say that is because knowing what I know about his injury, as how that relates to a jump shot, and then how that relates to gross learning of new motor patterns, it all kind of makes sense. So the first thing we're going to go over here is the actual anatomy of what happened to him in the first place. So based on the Sixers medical staff, they said that he had a scapular muscle imbalance that was leading to shoulder impingement. So let's start with scapular imbalance. So if you've ever seen your shoulder blades as you raise your hands up overhead, your shoulder blades actually move along with that. It's called scapulohumeral rhythm. And in general, for every 2 degrees of shoulder motion, you have 1 degree of that scapular movement. So if you have a scapular muscle imbalance and your scapula is not moving appropriately, it can affect your shoulder motion. And so what happens with that is you have to restore some of that scapular balance, muscle balance, because the scapula, as I like to say, sets the stage for shoulder motion. And then the second aspect you have to understand about the shoulder itself is it's anatomically rich. There's lots of structures in it. You have multiple tendons, you have your acromion, you have your coracoid, you have your labrum, you have multiple bursa. It's anatomically rich, but it's anatomically narrow. It's a pretty small space. So in general, your shoulder joint is what we call a ball and socket joint. Your upper arm, your humerus, the humeral head. So if that's the head of the humerus, it goes into the socket of your shoulder joint here, right? Imagine that's the socket. And then you have all these other structures in there. It's a very, very tight space. And when that shoulder joint is moving, it's your muscular control and balance that's controlling how the head of your humerus is moving. If those muscles are not working appropriately, that humeral head can start to run into stuff. And that's what causes some of that impingement. You know, there's lots, if you're a guy out there and you raise your hand over your head and you feel some pain, it could be due to impingement, And so the reason why that's really important to understand as it relates to a jump shot is this. Impingement most often occurs between the degrees of 60 to 120 degrees. Think about a jump shot. What's one of the main portions of a jump shot, specifically for Markelle Fultz, who had that high release? 60 to 120. It's almost that really, really mid-range spot, right? Secondly, what you need to understand is that when you internally rotate your arm, when your thumb is down like this, that actually closes down that shoulder space even more because the head of your humerus is internally rotating. Again, with a jump shot, your hand is down, correct? So your hand is down, and now you're coming through this space. So it makes sense that for Markelle Fultz, every time, if he has that impingement and scapular imbalance, every time he's coming through the 60 to 120 range with his hand internally rotated, it's exacerbating. It's really, really causing pain for him. So what do we see on his new jump shot? We're seeing a lower release point. That means he's not going through a full range of motion because he's probably gotten so used to pain or anticipating pain that he's now changed that jump shot. And that makes perfect sense because from a neuroscience approach, pain is your brain alerting your body to not do that action. Think about a time you've been hurt and you try to compensate or adapt a certain motion, right, to get around it. Same thing Fultz is doing. We saw it actually before he got officially diagnosed. People were watching him trying to mess with his shot himself. Now we're seeing it again because he's had that negative feedback loop for so long. He's now having to change that jumper to keep it lower rather than get up through that pain zone, which makes perfect sense. And so now he has a new jumper, right? So a jump shot is a pretty ingrained motor pattern. Like for Fultz, he's probably been working on that thing his whole life. When you switch to a new jumper, which is a gross motor pattern, at first there's going to be a lot of variance. When you're in that beginner stage, there's a lot of variance. Even in the intermediate stage, you do make a lot of gains, but you have variance until you hit the expert stage where you really start to, it becomes second nature. You're not thinking about things mechanically, you're just shooting the ball, right? So right now we're seeing him work on this new jumper, and maybe it is his new jumper or not. Maybe eventually he'll get to the point where you can get that arm overhead and he kind of works through it. But we're seeing some of these lower yips and inconsistent fluidity, but that makes perfect sense because for him, it's a new motor pattern, and therefore there's going to be variance in the fluidity of the shot. And actually those mistakes that you make when you're learning a new motor pattern are very, very important for eventually solidifying that motor pattern. It's kind of like you're doing little self-corrections your body's making as you eventually solidify that motor pattern. So knowing all that, hopefully you can kind of stop hyperventilating and understand that these are natural. What we're seeing with his jump shot right now is a natural byproduct of his injury, how it relates to actual jump shot mechanics, and how that relates to the process of motor learning. Thanks for watching. Until next time.